Good morning. Our passage from Mark's Gospel is what is referred to as an apocalypse text. And people tend to think of movies like Mad Max when they think of apocalypses. End of the world stuff, dystopian stories, The Walking Dead, Left Behind books. Maybe the world we're in right now. I'll get back to the Mad Max movies later, but the rest of that you can just left that behind. Because the authors of the Left Behind books, while they might have written compelling fiction for some people, did a disservice to a scriptural understanding of apocalypse. Because apocalypse is not about getting your individual self right with Jesus so that when he comes back in glory, you'll be on the right side and will be able to sit back and eat popcorn and watch as the rest of the fools who didn't choose Jesus suffer torment for their sins. Apocalypse is actually about all of us, and it's a Greek word that means revelation. Apocalyptic books in the Bible are rare. Daniel and Revelation are the only full apocalyptic books we have. But apocalyptic is a common genre in the biblical world, and apocalyptic themes run through books. The text we have this morning from Mark is an example. The Apostle Paul's writings speak of Revelation quite a bit as well. As an aside, apocalyptics would be the name I would choose if I were ever to do roller derby. So there you go. But what apocalyptic literature reminds its hearers or reveals to its hearers is that until the very end, when God wipes away every tear from our eyes, our redemption is not complete. It is not going to be finished as long as anyone on earth is in pain. Our freedom is restricted as long as some people remain in bondage and suffering. Our longing is not just for ourselves privately, it is for everyone. And you can hear that in Mark's Revelation in chapter 13. Then the Son of Man, which is language from Daniel's Gospel, will send his angels to gather his elect from the ends of the earth to the ends of heaven. In other words, there is no place, no suffering that is so far away that God would not be able to find you and gather you up. We read this text during Advent, and we consider the birth of Jesus in an apocalyptic way. How is God revealing something new to the world in the birth of Jesus Christ? Today, we're also hearing it 8 months into a global pandemic. And we consider our world in an apocalyptic way. What is God revealing to the world through what we're living in now? Even in the midst of our coronavirus worries, many of us still read this passage from a place of relative comfort and safety. And so we may not intuitively understand how promises of war and destruction would be seen as good news to people. War is not hope for people who benefit from stability. As I mentioned a few weeks ago when we read Zephaniah, your social location determines whether or not you hear this apocalypse as good news or bad news. War and destruction are actually a place of hope for people who live under constant threats of violence and dislocation, because systems of violence and racism continue to harm and exploit people, and until we destroy those corrupt systems, they won't know about the good news. Think of people who are seeking sanctuary, people from countries that are torn apart by violence. If your own government is trying to kill you and is doing nothing to keep you safe and is actually trying to harm you, what do? People in that situation are facing things I can't imagine. Do they stay where they are and maybe die from violence or starvation or government acts? Or do they try their luck to make it to safety in another country, knowing that they may die in a refugee camp or in a boat crossing the sea or in a caravan moving across the desert? Because when all of your possible choices are potentially bad ones, maybe the promise from Mark's Gospel of "this is but the beginning of the birth pangs" is a word of hope, because birth leads to new life. Earlier in the pandemic, I was talking with my counselor about how scattered and jangly this pandemic has made me feel, how my shelter-in-place time was reminding me of the time when I was on maternity leave when our first son was born. Before Alden was born, I had all these great plans for what I was going to do with my time off work. I was going to garden, I was going to sew curtains for the kitchen in our rental house, I was going to read books. And then he was born, and my metric for success each day became instead, I managed to take a shower. I got nothing accomplished in those days, at least not the way I was thinking about accomplishing things. But I did keep a new life alive without having any particular skills or training for the job, so that's an accomplishment, right? And I think the days we're in now are similar. We had no idea what these days were going to require of us, of how much labor it would be, emotional labor at least, to adapt to the changes we've had to make in the past months. So apocalypse is a good description. We are in birth pangs right now, and we don't know exactly what will be expected of us in this new life. Mark's apocalypse does not leave people with destruction. There is more to come, and people are to prepare for it. He says, in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will fall from the heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Because once the divine enters the world, even the heavens themselves will be shaken. By making reference to sun, moon, stars, Mark is cluing us in to the truth that God's reign is a cosmic reign. It's not just a change of administration. It's an entirely new creation that affects the entire universe. So all of those systems on earth that enslave people, they'll be gone. Cancer, gone. War, gone. Bombings, gone. Shootings, gone. Credit card debt and second mortgages, gone. Child abuse, gone. Systemic racism, wiped away. Genocide, no more. Terrorism, gone. Poverty, gone. Pandemic viruses, gone. This is an unrecognizable world to us to imagine. It's almost unimaginable, isn't it? And isn't that sad? We are so used to the world in which we live that we can't even imagine a world of peace, where all are fed, where all are safe, where new life comes from death. I've been praying, though, about how this time we're in now maybe can help us see our problems in clearer relief, so that as we rebuild, as we return, maybe we can be intentional about it in new ways. People of color are dying in greater numbers from this virus than are white people. Some people are dying from this because they can't afford to go to a doctor, or because they've been told they will lose their jobs if they miss work, or because they've been told the virus isn't real. Our economy remains challenged, and people who lose their jobs lose their health insurance. We must find ways to care for each other as the holes in our safety net are being revealed to be big, gaping chasms. Apocalypse requires resurrection, a belief that life can come from death. I rewatched the Mad Max movie Fury Road recently, and it is a perfect apocalypse movie, even if it is mainly a 2-hour-long car chase across a desert that is seemingly devoid of life or hope. This movie portrays a dystopian world where water is in limited supply and human fertility has collapsed. It is a dying world. It needs resurrection. Charlize Theron's character steals away the few fertile and pregnant women from a greedy warlord who wants life and the water supply to be fully and only under his family's control. And our group of thieves meet up with older women who have been planting seeds while the world was ending, hoping that life would yet return to their barren world. They take control of the water supply from the warlords so that it will no longer benefit one family, but will give life to everyone. It is a movie entirely about protecting those who bring new life and about those who seek to cultivate life. It is a movie about the beginning of the birth pangs. It is an apocalypse. God does God's own work during the apocalypse, and we are not in control of that. Remember Jesus' comment in the text, about that day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. So beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. But we have our own work to do during apocalypse. We plant seeds. We protect lives. We make art. We take naps. A number of my friends have adopted dogs since the pandemic began. We let our souls and calendars lie fallow so new life can emerge and grow. Our participation in God's work to bring new life matters, providing a space of hope for people who only see destruction in barren land. I worry that too often in our formerly normal lives, we may have lived in a way that pretended we didn't need resurrection. In one sense, I'm talking about the way we try to control things to keep life in a narrowly, safely managed way. I build my life as if resurrection is fine for other people, but I'm intent on avoiding it for me. And my inability to control a single thing has been made pretty clear through this whole pandemic. But I think we're skeptical of resurrection too, of the idea that God can do things we can't imagine. If we believed in resurrection, we wouldn't be afraid to let things die. Maybe that's a way to phrase things for another time, when people and plans and jobs aren't dying all around us. Let's not lose hold of the fact that over 250,000 people have died in our country this year so far from this virus. Maybe a better way to speak of resurrection for now is this. As we watch our loved ones and the life we knew die, the fear and grief we feel don't have to be our only emotions. Maybe we can let hope and trust in resurrection sit beside us in our grief as companion, so that when seeds of new life take root, we'll have hearts open to see it in our midst. Trust in resurrection means we believe God can and will bring life where we only see despair and death. To plant seeds of life and hope and beauty when we see other people planting great crops of fear. Friends, that's an act of faith. It's a sign of trust in God's ability to make all things new. We enter the season of Advent with an apocalypse, with a revelation that a change is a-coming. And we're told to wait for it and to watch for it. And we're also told very clearly that the prediction business is not ours. About that day, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, only the Father. We're told simply to keep awake. This morning we also heard from Psalm 126, the psalm from whence we chose the theme for our Advent sermons, for those who dream. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with shouts of joy. The psalm ends with, may those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. The psalmist is describing an apocalypse, a revelation that in the brokenness and despair we see around us, there's still hope. Our despair will not prevail. Are we willing to be people who dream into existence a world we cannot yet see, or one we have not yet fully experienced? What kind of new world is waiting for us on the other side of our dreams? As we enter Advent, we wait, we watch, and trusting in resurrection, we believe that this is but the beginning of the birth pangs. So may we use these days to plant seeds of hope in our world. New life is coming, and God lets us be midwives. Thanks be to God. Amen.